Hello and welcome to the Providence College Podcast. My name is Joe Carr. Our guest today is Sean Dufresne, a PC senior from Yonkers, New York. Like generations of PC students before him, Sean has made WDOM, the college's radio station, part of his experience here. But when it comes to sports play-by-play, Sean and others have taken it to another level, broadcasting games this year featuring 6 different sports and including, safe to say, more students than ever before. Sean, welcome to the PC Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is really interesting to me because, as you and I have talked about, that was part of my PC experience starting in 1979 when WDOM was in the basement of Joseph Hall. It's so much fun, though, to see how far it's come, and especially in this context where we talk about play-by-play. So 6 different sports this year. Give us a rundown. How many games, how many students involved, and et cetera?
Yeah, of course. So actually, I did the whole wrap-up tweet on Twitter a couple days ago. I was running through Mixler trying to get a full sense of everything we did, and it was 48 total broadcasts this year. Like you mentioned, it was 6 different teams we did. We, of course, brought back the men's basketball, men's hockey broadcasts, which have always been going on. We brought back women's basketball, which we had not done since before the pandemic. And we also introduced broadcasts of the men's and women's soccer teams, which was a blast. Found a couple kids that were really interested in soccer. They were like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll give this a try. Jumped on a broadcast with a few of them that, of course, they're big fans of the Premier League, so they felt like that could translate, and they did a great job. I got a lot of people interested through that, and I believe the total was 18 different students representing all 4 grade years, and all of them did a great job.
So men's and women's soccer, basketball, and hockey. That's the 6 sports?
Yep, that's right.
Any chance of jumping into softball or lacrosse this spring, or you might stretch it out to 7, or do you think that'll be the end of it at 6?
So we want to. I think the big thing with lacrosse, I reached out to Jen Reinerson, who's one of the associate athletic directors here, and I think the case with lacrosse is there tends to be more family members there for those games compared to soccer, so they like to use the press box for them. Not the press box, but the box seating, which we totally understand. Of course, that's the priority. And softball, I have to ask again about that. I know I got to crash their doubleheader against Butler a couple days ago, and just the vibes there were great, so it would be great if we could call a few of those.
Oh, that sounds terrific and like a great idea. It's good that you mentioned Jen, Arthur Parks, Mike Billings. These are the staff members who handle media relations for athletics, and certainly they're involved in this. You couldn't, it seems to me, accomplish this without a lot of help from them.
Yeah, they were great throughout the whole process. Right before the first week of classes, I shot an email to Arthur Parks basically saying, hey, this might be a stretch, but do you think we'd be able to call some soccer games this year? And right away I got a reply from him just saying, yeah, let me know what you want to call and I can see if I can make that work. Then linked me to Jen. She basically brought me up to the box. She said, what do you need? We can get you an Ethernet cable. We can we could figure this out and hit the ground running from there. I mean, within a week and a half of being back, we called the men's soccer game against URI. That was our very first broadcast of the year. Had over 20 listeners on that, which for the first broadcast in the new year felt pretty good. A lot of people seeing that we're doing soccer for the first time. So it created some early buzz, which felt sustained at the very least with soccer throughout the year. And of course, Mike Billings, like you mentioned, has always been great. Loves the student representation up on the bridge at Schneider Arena and has always had us in a great spot up there.
Which sport carried the heaviest load? Would it have been men's hockey? Was that the most games?
Yeah, I would say so. And definitely the sport that I took part in the most, because I've been on calls for that all 4 years here at Providence. With the help of Thomas Zinzarella, my freshman year, I know he's been on this podcast as well a few years ago. He was able to get me up there for a few intermission reports my freshman year, which was great. Right before COVID, I was able to do that. And then my sophomore year with Kyle Meyer, my senior broadcast partner, we were calling a game from a Feinstein classroom because we couldn't get into any of the arenas that year, unfortunately. But yeah, this year I would say travel-wise too, during the winter break, my friend Leo and I were able to get to the West Point rink and call that game. And they were very appreciative that some away team media wanted to come in. And yeah, it was truly a remarkable year.
And then the Hockey East playoffs, right?
That's right.
Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so with the women's side of things, we actually got to call their quarterfinal game against Maine. That was right here at Schneider Arena. Great experience. That I actually was able to call a good chunk of their regular season games too, and they, had the field been a little bit bigger for the national tournament, I do think they would have had a good chance to get in. But in terms of the men's playoffs, it got a little dicey with the spring break. A couple friends and I went down to Florida for a week, so I was kind of banking on those wins in the playoffs for the team, but they made it happen. We were able to get to TD Garden with the help of John Smith with WDOM as well as Mike Billings. And yeah, truly just an unforgettable experience.
not unusual for student athletes playing men's basketball or men's ice hockey in particular to have media coverage like this, and most of their games are on television for that matter. But what about the other sports? How do the student athletes and the coaches react to the idea of having their games broadcast?
Yeah, well, for starters, I know a handful of soccer athletes were shooting us DMs saying like, "Oh, this is great! Like, it's great to see you guys going." Lucas Burns, I know the one of the goaltenders for the men's team, was very appreciative of it. Sam Biven, another forward on the team, moved into my D-track room for the this semester. So I was telling him, and he was like, "Oh, that was you," and it was a pretty funny moment there. But yeah, it is great to see that they recognize that we're there and that we kind of bring that fan energy into the broadcast. But we're still very we'd like to think we're knowledgeable enough of the game to have a listenable call. And it's truly been great to see the appreciation from them.
What kinds of progress do you feel like you've made personally as a play-by-play announcer over the course of these experiences?
Yeah, well, I like to go back and listen to some of my early stuff, especially my sophomore year remote broadcast. I feel like you can hear that I'm terrified, even though it's the most no pressure situation. It's just me and a buddy in a Feinstein classroom, like I mentioned. But yeah, I think a lot of it was just repetition. I think especially junior year, Liam Tormey was the WDOM sports director last year. He was involved with an internship, I know, with ABC. Also was doing some work with the Cal. So that opened up a lot of the hockey games for me to do. So I feel like that repetition as a junior really helped my confidence. Because this year, I developed a pretty good routine, show up about 45 minutes before, get the game notes, study those, highlight a couple things, and then just hit the ground running.
When you and others made the decision to expand, did you have any difficulty finding people to fill these slots, or is there more interest than there is capacity?
It wasn't too difficult. I think I initially thought it would be difficult because in September I put out a announcement basically saying if there's any students interested, feel free to come. I hosted a big talk in Feinstein trying to rally the troops, get some support going, and I would say about 6 people showed up. So I was a little down at first, thinking, oh man, this was my big goal this year, right? To try and lay the groundwork for some students to follow suit after I graduate. And I was met with a flurry of emails from a bunch of students after that. It's like, oh, hey, sorry I couldn't make it, but this is still something I want to do. And I think that ability for them to be thrown right into it, there wasn't really a wait list per se. It was like, okay, I would have a big Excel spreadsheet, and I'd say, okay, I'll put you on, the women's soccer game against Butler, or okay, I'll put you on the women's hockey game against BU, whatever it might be. And just after one broadcast, a lot of the reception from them was, okay, definitely some bumps in the road, but I really enjoyed it. I want to keep doing it. And that, that just kind of built. They would tell their friends, they'd be like, oh, hey, can I feature so-and-so on the next game? I see there's an open slot on the spreadsheet. I'm like, yeah, of course. And it was really great to see just as the season went along. I think as a group, we collectively improved.
You mentioned, used the phrase laying the groundwork, and that's an interesting concept. You are graduating, so you won't be here to see it or engineer it. But what do you see in the future for this? Will it likely grow beyond here?
Well, it's definitely the hope. I think coming out of COVID, of course, I don't want to discredit the past work of the previous sports directors in my position because they all did a fantastic job.
Thank you, since I'm one of them.
Yeah, no, might as well throw you in there as well, yeah. But yeah, I think a lot of it was, it's been, at least for me personally, it was almost 2 full years of not being able to call a game from inside of an arena. So, that was always lingering in my mind. I couldn't imagine, it hasn't even been talked about, at least amongst students. It hasn't been advertised in any of the team's social medias, whatever it might be. So, I had this sense of, geez, I have to, at the very least, make people know we're there again, and start from there. And I think we've finished there. There's people now that are willing to listen to our broadcast routinely. We'll get some DMs on our Instagram and Twitter, basically saying that was awesome. I love the energy you guys brought, and yeah, I'm trying to assemble a team now of people that I can trust will continue to preach this message of, it's a very easy way to get a nice seat in the arena. Test it out. If you like it, then you can kind of ride that wave throughout the whole year.
So WDOM remains where it's always been on the dial, 91.3, but you also have streaming now too, so that expands, at least for the radio station generally, coverage dramatically, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's nice about the radio, and I think what has made people love that in the community, is because, I think the charm in it is that no one's being paid to do any of that stuff. You have all these kids here with strong opinions on certain sports teams, whether it's the teams here or, professional teams. So, that makes it worthwhile to tune in. And I think that that same charm is kind of brought to the student broadcasting where, obviously none of us are getting paid to do that. We just love the game. We love the team, and we want to see the team do well. So we bring that sustained energy throughout the season, and I think it makes us a fun listen.
In addition to play-by-play, you have a number of sports-oriented talk shows, too, including one that you do called Offsides on hockey. And tell us a little more about what that menu of programming looks like.
Yeah, of course. So Offsides was something I started my freshman year with Kyle Meyer. You'll be hearing his name a lot through this. I met him orientation weekend, went into my freshman year with the idea of, okay, I'd love to have a sports talk show. I remember coming by the booth during my tour when I was a senior in high school and thinking, yeah, that almost had to be sold right there. But started that show freshman year. It was about the Providence men's and women's hockey teams as well as the NHL. And we had a great time. It was just kind of an innocent little, extracurricular freshman year that, of course, COVID hit. And we wanted to keep doing it. So we turned it into a podcast, which is something we're still doing today. Albeit we've had a busy senior year, so we haven't been able to get onto that as much. But the show has always been, something we've loved doing. It's 8 semesters. I'm not sure how many other shows have been around all 8 semesters in terms of people in my grade. But, yeah, it started off just the two of us. Later on, we had Coach Nate Lehman on. I believe that was junior year. Yeah, right before the opening day against Army. And a handful of guys on the men's and women's teams, and they've all really appreciated it.
Yeah, hockey people are great when it comes to that kind of thing. Having covered a lot of sports, I always, in many ways, have enjoyed hockey the most, and that's because of the people and how much they tend to cooperate and appreciate that kind of coverage, and makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
Absolutely does.
Kyle does a great job too. We should give him a nod here. I've listened to the show and have a great appreciation for the work that you guys have done together. It's really good. And so let's talk a little bit about your background and what generated your interest in this kind of thing. Have you always been kind of interested in sports play-by-play?
Yeah, well, it's funny enough, and my parents will tell you this. When I was a little kid watching the NHL, that's something that's always been on in our household for as long as I can remember. I used to, for fun, mute the TV for the game and try and say what was going on my own. They always loved that. Sometimes if I was playing one of the NHL video games growing up, I would kind of commentate my own game and stuff like that. So I think the mindset has always been there. And then of course, hockey, in terms of actually playing the sport, I played it in high school, got a little more serious. Wanted to focus on that, but it started off as a radio show interest when we got here, and then there was the Thomas Inzarella meeting basically saying, hey, if anybody wants to give this a shot. I tried to preach the same message he preached. It's a no pressure thing, especially it's a professional setting, but not a lot of pressure is what I tried to say, and I've just really enjoyed that.
Who are some of your favorite play-by-play announcers? Anybody you kind of model your game after a little bit?
Well, yeah, of course. I got to give a shout out to Kenny Albert and Sam Rosen. I was actually, through some fortunate connections, able to interview both of them during the pandemic, and they had a lot of awesome stories just about their come up and people that they were inspired by to jump into play-by-play. And I like when there's guys that are, like Sam Rosen, for instance, has been the Rangers guy for a long time, but he still keeps that kind of neutral mindset. The away team scores, he's not going to have this deflated response because, some announcers appreciate good hockey, and that's what I've tried to sound like. Of course, I did more color with the men's team, but I did a lot of play-by-play for the women's team, and that was definitely a standard I tried to hold myself to where, it doesn't matter what's going on, you want to have that passion every time.
What about some other sports, even NFL or Major League Baseball, things like that? Who catches your eye or your ear when you're taking in these games?
Gee, let's see. Because I have, there was a point in time where it was all hockey for a long time. I'm trying to think. I like Kevin Harlan with the NBA. He's another guy. I guess you could say the same thing with, he's very neutral. I guess Mike Breen, that might be a little biased being from New York, but I know he does some great work with the national games as well as with the Knicks. Let's see, what else here? I know a lot of people aren't big Joe Buck fans, but I think what he's done with baseball has been fantastic because, I would always watch the postseason of sports even if I didn't really know what was going on, and he certainly brought some good energy. I'm
a huge Joe Buck fan and just finished his memoir, which is terrific. It's very funny. He's got a great sense of humor and such an interesting life story, which makes it a lot of fun. Funny you should mention Mike Breen. Get to this in kind of a roundabout way, but as you and I have talked about, when I was at WDOM in the early 80s, the only sport where we did play-by-play was hockey, and you kind of had to work your way to it. So when you became a junior, you're the kind of the second guy, sort of color. We didn't really know enough to provide any real analysis. And as a senior, did play-by-play. So the guy in front of me was John Hennessy, class of 82, who became the voice of the New Jersey Devils. So, and John is one of the most talented broadcasters I've ever been around. Just made it look easy. And well, not to say he didn't work hard at it, but incredibly talented and had a great career in sports play-by-play. But behind me was Steve McDonald, who is still in Rhode Island, and he's the play-by-play voice of the Rhode Island football, URI football, and basketball programs, also known as Jim Shorts on AM and FM radio in the morning. But early in his career, Steve became friendly with Mike Breen. And through a course of a variety of things, he ended up in the studio one morning during the Imus show when Mike Breen was doing sports. Breen invited him to come watch it. And Don Imus took a liking to Steve because of that. And eventually, Steve became Mike Breen's vacation backup on the Imus show. So it's just awesome. Strange how these things all come back together.
Yeah.
Someday Steve will be on this podcast. I've been chasing him for years, but anybody who knows Steve knows that nailing him down to get somewhere at a specific time can sometimes be a challenge. But it goes back that far, and all those connections can kind of line up a little bit. So it's fun to talk about, and it's been a long and an interesting road. But PC has had a lot of people be successful in sports media. Thomas Zinzarella currently is a good example, class of 2021, right? He's the play-by-play voice of the Yankees High A affiliate now, the Hudson Valley Renegades. Somebody you keep in touch with?
A little bit. Of course, I don't want to be in the way of his work because, he has done a great job. I know he was calling baseball in Montana for a little bit at one point in time.
Mississippi too, right? Yeah, Biloxi.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And I did talk to him recently, actually. Both him and Matt St. Jean, who were kind of, when I was a freshman, just the two big broadcasters here. And, my question for them was, when, because we were calling the TD Garden semifinal game, I figured they would have known the last time WDOM went there. And that was the last time I spoke to them. They said it was 2018 when Providence was in the finals against Boston University. And, it's always great to reach out to those guys. Matt St. Jean had very nice things to say about the work we've done this year. He quote tweeted the wrap-up tweet that I put on Twitter a few days ago, basically saying that he's really enjoyed seeing the club grow, and that meant a lot because there certainly has been a lot of hard work going on behind the scenes, not just for me, but so many students here that have really put in the time to show that they care about this. And
Matt's been involved in some college basketball things on the video side, right? I'm not exactly sure what he's doing now, but certainly worth paying attention to on Twitter during college basketball season.
Yeah, he's very prominent on there. Even if you don't really know. Yeah, I think he's just more Big East, not as much Providence oriented now, but he seems to be on the money with a lot of his scouting reports on players and predictions, whatever it may be.
You mentioned your fan interest, and growing up in Yonkers, New York, I find it interesting that you're a Philadelphia Flyers fan. So a tough season, but I just glanced before coming up here today. They've won 4 in a row. Have you found something here? What's going on?
Well, here's the thing. I would say most Flyers fans aren't happy with this right now because you look at Connor Bedard being the projected top pick in the upcoming draft. I think they would prefer better chances at that than maybe the 10th pick in the first round or something like that. But I'm at a point where if they're doing well, I'm happy to see that because it has some people like to say that we're stuck in this endless cycle of mediocrity, but we have some enticing I'm saying we, like I'm wearing their jersey right now or something, but. Yeah, they've got some great prospects, in terms of they've just had some tough luck with injuries too. I think John Tortorella is a great coach for them to have during this phase that they're in. And yeah, who knows? They're not out of it yet. They're only like 12 points out of a wild card spot. Of course, that's easier said than done. But, with 9 games left, who knows? Do
you remember how you connected with Philadelphia when you were young? How did you pick that out when you were surrounded by the Rangers, Islanders, and other closer teams?
Yeah, so it's a funny story because from what I remember in like kindergarten and first grade, I was a Rangers fan. Like I would have the stickers on my notebooks or whatever it may be. I'd have like the the hats and the jerseys or whatever. But they were not very good in the mid 2000s, and I remember my dad, who has been a lifelong Flyers fan. He's from Montreal, but his story is that the first NHL game he went to was Canadiens Flyers, and of course that was the Broad Street Bullies time. This bright orange team invades the league and starts beating everybody up. So I think for him as a kid, that was an awesome thing to see. But yeah, I remember I believe it was like 2008. The Flyers were in the playoffs. They had a nice run to the third round, And I think my dad was like, hey, I'm watching the Flyers in the basement. I know you don't really watch them, but why don't you watch the game with your dad here? And then I don't know, I just immediately fell in love with them that series, and it's kind of been like that ever since.
Picking up on your dad's favorite team is a totally legitimate answer to that question. So that solves that puzzle in a very nice way. So it's good to have that to follow together, I guess.
Of course.
So,
and it's spread to the rest of my family too.
Even better. That sounds good. I'd like to talk a little more about WDOM today, kind of more broadly. So we kind of touched on this. You have over the air and internet. Tell us what's going on there with music formats, with participation, with opportunities for students to get involved in various ways. How popular is it right now among students?
Yeah, I think it's as popular as it's ever been. I mean, I think the way the club has grown since my freshman year, it's been really great to see, because I know at the very least this semester, I don't know if this has happened since I've been a student here, but for the first time in a while, every single showtime slot was filled. From that starts at 6 a.m. every day, goes to 2 a.m., and Sunday to Saturday, it's like that. Everybody has a show at that time. Some might have dropped out since that if they found out they had a show at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, but we had enough people sign up to the point where there was interest to fill up a whole calendar, which I think has been great for the club. There's all those plaques in the studio with winning an outstanding media organization, and I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of those awards come around again in the next couple of years, given this trend.
Are there any deliberate connections with the PCTV student organization with video production?
So there tends to be, at least in past years, there was. I did want to collaborate with them a little bit this year, but I felt like my main goal was still to get the interest back in the broadcasting. I didn't want to, do too much, because I didn't want to lose the thread of what I was trying to do from the get-go. But I would definitely like to see some more collaboration with them in the future, because it would be great to. I know some sports shows with WDOM would occasionally go into the PCTV studio and be in front of a camera and kind of get the hang of that. And I think that's great for people that want to get involved with sports media. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that during my time here, but I think it's definitely something that can be taken advantage of.
As you think about where you might go, and we'll talk more about your aspirations after you graduate in May, any thoughts about maybe adding some more of that video production or on-camera elements of this kind of work to your portfolio?
Yeah, of course. It's kind of been an ongoing thing since my freshman year. I've tried to teach myself Photoshop. I've been using the video editing software Filmora to try and make little montages for the Instagram, whether it's for WDOM Sports or the Offsides podcast we have. And I think I'm at a point now where I'm a lot more confident in what I'm able to do. It used to be very minimalist and basic what I was making freshman year, and I think the pandemic actually helped quite a bit, because I hit a point where class is done. Now it's 4 or 5 months, hard to find work or anything, so I might as well just fool around on Photoshop. But yeah, I like the spot I'm in with that. Of course, there's a lot more to learn, especially with the Adobe Creative Cloud. There's a lot of software that I still need to work on familiarizing myself with, but I think I'm in a good spot to the point where I can get my foot in the door somewhere with that if I needed to.
That's really interesting. We're all walking around every day carrying in our pockets an excellent camera, where we can really capture anything. And by the way, the video software, the editing software is in there too. So many opportunities for just creating stuff that people can engage with. Let's talk about the connection to the PC education part of the experience, Sean. So when you think about the work that you've been able to do and that you aspire to do, which is in the communications realm, what are the things that you've gained in the classroom or other parts of the experience that you think help you in that endeavor?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of what I've gained, at least from the communication side of things, has been in the last couple semesters, because I declared my communication minor in the fall of my junior year. So it was 3 semesters to kind of get all that stuff done, and I was doing that in unison with the psych major, which I declared pretty late. So I had a lot on my plate junior year, but this year in particular, learning about, just print media, how that evolves into radio, then television, and, learning about media trends, things like that. I feel like it's made me a lot better equipped to, let's say I do end up in maybe a sports marketing role, or maybe, some type of audience engagement role, perhaps. I've been able to use those tools that were, half self-taught, half taught through classes that, I was been able to make some content for it. So I'm pretty happy with where I'm at, and I think I can credit a lot of that to the communication department.
And we've always thought, and I think this is inarguable, that the liberal arts basis, the writing requirements, the communications skills that come from the general PC education help in just about any form of vocation, but certainly in communications related ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just, the curriculum that Providence has, I think it builds a lot of character because it's obviously not easy. You think to Civ, but it's a collective experience that everybody's having, which in my opinion makes it much more worth it because, it's not like anybody has a leg up. Everybody is experiencing this collectively together. And I think that spreads into, whether it's psychology, learning how to do research for the first time. I've tailored a lot of that towards sports stuff to try and make it relate to my minor a little bit more. And yeah, I do like the creative freedom you get as you make your way into being an upperclassman and focus on more specific disciplines. But yeah, I've really enjoyed my time here. It's
great to hear that you're doing well in the communications minor, which is new. So you're among the first students in that. And tell us a little bit more about what some of those courses are and some of the experiences that you're having academically in that realm.
Yeah, of course. So I know it's rapidly changing in terms of options that you can take for that minor, but I've taken classes like rhetorical analysis, mass media and politics, oral communication, visual communication, and it's been great. I think it's very similar to how psychology has gone for me in terms of electives that you have to take. There's cultural psychology, there's social psychology, there's communication disorders, there's all these different things that all tie into each other. Sometimes you have terms that overlap with certain classes. And I found that to happen quite frequently with communication too, but it's in a really nice way because you have different contexts for different things you're learning about. And yeah, it's been captivating stuff.
This always makes me, when I think about WDOM and things like it always reminds me of one of the characteristics of PC that I think makes it so great. Of course, I'm biased, but students come here and they have actual real opportunities to participate in a variety of things. It could be one of the media organizations, it could be an investment club, it could be any number of things. But you mentioned from your first year, you were able to get behind a microphone, and that's really a nice thing, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I'm just so lucky, honestly. That's been my thought process throughout these 4 years, and I've always thought with the broadcasting side of things and just the radio station. We have such beautiful facilities here, Division I quality, and I feel like to not have been able to take advantage of that, whether it's the broadcasting or the getting involved on social media, reporting for the teams, it really would have been a missed opportunity. And I hope that's something that underclassmen may be here and think, okay, like this doesn't seem like something that's right now that competitive to get into. I can really get an edge now, and down the road I might discover that this is something I want to do.
So you'll be graduating in, as we speak, about 7 weeks, I guess, 7 or 8 weeks. Right. Not too far away. It's real now, isn't it?
All of a sudden, so, yeah.
That happens fast. What's next for you? What kinds of things are you thinking about?
The goal right now is to get involved with something in broadcasting. I know that's easier said than done. I know that you're going to have to pay your dues if you do something like that. You may have to call a sport you might not be familiar with, or you may have to, work with a team that's not exactly close to home. And I recognize the challenges behind that, but I think given the experience I have now, up until this point, it's just been so fulfilling, and I don't want it to end here. So I think that's certainly number one in my mind right now. But if I can find something else sooner, just to get my foot in the door somewhere, then of course I'm going to go for that.
Now that all sounds great. I'm sure that there's a bright future in front of you, and we'll be looking forward to keeping in touch with you and seeing how things go and how it develops throughout the course of the next few years.
Thank you very much.
Sean, this has been fun. Thanks for coming in and joining us on the podcast, and good luck the rest of the way. It's a lot in front of you in the next couple of months, so a lot of it will be a lot of fun. So I hope you take time to enjoy that in the midst of all the stress associated with it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to it, and thank you for having me on.
Providence College senior Sean Dufresne, our guest today. Thank you for joining us. You can subscribe to the Providence College podcast at all the usual places, and they're available on the college's YouTube channel. Feedback is welcome, of course, at podcast@providence.edu. Thanks to our producer, Chris Judge. I'm Joe Carr. Until next time.